I'm Anna Tsing, one of the makers of Feral Atlas, the More Than Human Anthropocene. Working with software genius Nikki Tesla, co-editors Jennifer Deger, Alder Keleman Saxena, Feifei Zhou, and I assembled a group of more than 100 natural and social scientists, humanists, poets, and artists to offer a new approach to the current world condition of environmental catastrophe. Mixing genres and disciplines, we show you the social and ecological patchiness of the Anthropocene rather than a unified planetary situation. Using visual and digital magic, we offer stories of environmental injustice, radical diversity, and scientific surprise. In what follows, we'll introduce our project with 4 of our feral protagonists: a cow, a pesticide-spewing crop plane, a virus-carrying mosquito, and a radioactive blueberry. Explore our site at feralatlas.org. To know the terrible predicaments of our time, we hope you'll allow yourself the awe of stories. We hope our project inspires wonder in the midst of dread.
The introduction of pasture grass through European colonization has long-lasting consequences for Latin American landscapes. In eastern Panama, pastures prevent forests from growing back. Pastures also prevent Black and indigenous communities from controlling land. During my research in eastern Panama, many Emberá, Hunan, and Afro-Darianitas expressed great appreciation for the forest that used to grow. The colonists, on the other hand, who began to arrive in large numbers in the 1970s, preferred to cut the forest down. Many of them aspired to become ranchers, and many planted grass without having yet acquired cattle. Pastures enabled colonists to make legal claims on the land by showing that they had transformed forests into private property that could generate capital. And this supported the state's project to integrate eastern Panama to the national economy. But pasture grasses also spread without humans when their seeds are carried by the wind or by animals. And even though state planners had designated specific zones for cattle raising, the grass followed a different route, along the same highway that also brought colonists into the region. Along the highway, the secondary growth in fallow fields became vulnerable to grass invasion not only because of the field's ecological conditions, but also because of its legal classification as unproductive land. By preventing fallow fields from regrowing into forest, imported pasture grass enabled the dispossession of Black and indigenous communities and the transfer of land to colonists.
Feral Atlas shows how imperial and industrial infrastructures of the last 500 years have feral effects, human-caused but outside of human control. The great programs for the conquest of the earth promised modern ease and happiness, but in their inattention gave us a heap of terrifying, if unevenly spread, disasters. The Anthropocene is a world-ripping condition continually detonated by programs that have remade land, water, and air. Feral Atlas identifies 4 of these programs, which we call invasion, empire, capital, and acceleration. This landscape by Feifei Zhou illustrates capital. We see glittering cities and squalid slums. And all around, the commodification of earthly goods and labors for the profits of distant investors. Feral effects proliferate, from global warming and toxic fogs to pests and plagues. Zhou's illustration shows the historical conjuncture that has led to capitalism as a landscape-modifying project. Explore the terrain, and you will find the feral entities whose stories are told in Feral Atlas, including our cow. The landscape also opens into another way of knowing the disasters of the Anthropocene, that is, through the work of infrastructures in transforming social relations and ecologies. Click on any feral entity, and you'll be transported into a meditation on how imperial and industrial remakings of the Earth have made a systems-changing difference. Short videos, like this one by Armin Linke, focus starkly on infrastructural work. Here we see our cow subjected to the kind of work we call grid, the ecological simplification and discipline that rules agribusiness with so many feral effects.
Agricultural chemicals are quintessentially feral. They are virtually impossible to contain in space. They are constantly changing in interaction with living organisms, and they are notorious for defying the regulations meant to control them. My name is Alisa Paredes, and my entry in Feral Atlas was based on immersive field research on the banana plantations of Mindanao in the southern Philippines. Twice a week in this part of the world, bright yellow planes loaded with chemical fungicides fly over patchworks of banana fields and residential lands. The planes leave chemical trails that dissipate into the environment in the blink of an eye. When you're on the plantation, you can't see the drift exactly, but you do sense it. You sense it right inside of you, sitting between your nasal cavities and the front of your skull. Fungicidal drift is feral in the sense that it's both everywhere and nowhere at once, always lurking. This is the everyday reality of Mindanaoans who live near industrial farms. It's also a quality replicated on the Anthropocene detonator landscape, which helps visitors to the website experience ferality for themselves. People have many presumptions about pesticides. Because they are non-living matter, just the composition of lifeless chemicals, we think they're unchanging. Because they're man-made, we assume they stay within our control. Because they are a product of modern innovation, we invest in the idea that the benefits to humanity outweigh the costs. And because there are regulations in place, we believe that there's nothing to worry about. These are the kinds of assumptions that the more than human Anthropocene demands that we challenge. On Mindanao's banana plantations, synthetic fungicides come up against virulent pathogens, partners, if you will, like the disease-causing black sigatoka fungus, which the pesticides are meant to control. When the fungus is empowered by the conventions of plantation agriculture, it becomes a truly formidable foe that can make pesticides ineffective over time. To deal with this situation, plantations have started applying fungicides not as solo chemicals, but in rotating concoctions called chemical cocktails. These cocktails confuse the fungus from developing resistance to any one agrochemical. But they also confuse people and serve an important political purpose that way. Residents have no clear idea what is being sprayed when, and environmental activists cannot isolate the evidence that's necessary for making sound legal or scientific arguments in their defense. So the aerial spraying of fungicides continues. Plantation corporations continue to insist that it's the safest mode of chemical application. Civil society attempts to seek legal action have been inspiring, but so far they've also failed. Near banana plantations in other parts of the world, scientists have found pesticide traces in the blood of wildlife, including pesticides that have been legally banned as long as a decade ago. The banana plantations of the Philippines may feel like faraway places, but the same logics of capital have shaped a great many landscapes in very similar ways.
All the field reports in Feral Atlas are based on observation and research. While we play with the imagination, we do so grounded in empirical details about the world. The contributors take their research seriously. The project is a contribution to science and rigorous scholarship, as well as to the arts. Even Zhou's 4 fantastical landscapes, like this one, which illustrates the Anthropocene detonating conjunctures that we call empire, are collages full of historical reference. Let's start on the high ground at the bottom of your screen. Here are the Laotian poppy fields that helped fund the U.S. Indochina War. And here, on the left, are the Burmese teak plantations essential to British colonial rule. There's George Orwell shooting an elephant. Different places, different periods, but taken together, they show us the kind of landscape modifications through which empire detonates the Anthropocene. Moving downhill, upwards on your screen, you see the Netherlands East Indies 19th century cultivation system, which spread poverty and violence by forcing Javanese peasants to grow sugarcane for the metropole on their own subsistence fields. Sugarcane in many places rushes us toward the Anthropocene. You'll find it on all our detonator landscapes. Move toward the coast, and our reference switched to the sugarcane-hungry land grabs of Mozambique, and then the palm oil of West Africa, as illustrated by Ghanaian-British architect Larry Botchway. Smallholders grow this imperial commodity, but their autonomy is constrained by contracts, which force them to exploit themselves in all the worst legacies of the plantation. Move farther toward the coast, and step back into the Atlantic trade in kidnapped and enslaved human beings sent to the New World to grow that infamous sugar cane, among other things. Here is a ship on which bodies were bound and stacked as if they could be considered property. It looks like the Mosquito is headed there.
One of the exciting things about research is finding out something you had not imagined beforehand. You start with a big story. For example, many African Americans like me grow up with the story of the Middle Passage, but the story doesn't end there. As I began to focus on the conditions that millions of Africans were forced to endure, crammed into the hulls of ships, held captive sometime for months at a time, I could not get beyond the images of enslaved people tightly packed, chained together. I started to think about the filth and unhealthiness of those ships as an ecology. But something had the freedom to move about and in fact thrived in the moist and stifling environment of the ship's hold. It was the Aedes aegypti mosquito. This virus-carrying pest relied upon the drinking water held on board, and it transformed during the journey, evolving into something different from what it had been in the old world. This human-loving mosquito changed the New World ecology by introducing diseases such as the yellow fever virus. Transformed by the horrendous trade in human beings, this strain of mosquito emerged to become a global pest.
Drawing is a critical tool to analyze the spatial effects of our built environment. My name is Feifei Zhou, another co-editor of Fair Atlas and a maker of these detonator landscape drawings. To visualize the Anthropocene, it helps, from time to time, to place ourselves into imaginative positions of specific socially and historically situated individuals, whether human or non-human. This drawing you're looking at, titled Acceleration, looks at the world from a marine animal's point of view, and from below. The cluster of plastic waste threatens your livelihood, intoxicate your bodies. Cross-scale representations provide a useful way to form critical analysis on how fair effects were formed and spread on various scales. To understand the global effects of antimicrobial resistance on human bodies, we need to understand something as domestic as industrial pork factories, and as microscopic as antibiotics. Scales help us to bridge connections between the seen and the unseen. Collaboration with BIPOC artists form an important part of the landscape drawings. The collage from contemporary artwork by Filipino duo Amy and Enzo Camacho shows this mythological figure called Manalongo, which represents an intangible but unstoppable force that is guiding us in the world of acceleration. She's lingering on top of this industrial soy farm in the Philippines, but her legs are caught up in the plastic jungle. Just as with us, there's nowhere to hide. It's crucial for BIPOC artists to tell their own stories, especially those built on violence and exploitation.
In northern Ukraine, people have long made a living from the forest, hunting, fishing, picking berries and mushrooms. In 2014, berry picking in the Pripyat marshes leapt to an industrial scale. Researching a book on Chernobyl, I went picking too and followed the berry buyers to the warehouse. There, a radiation monitor waved a wand over the boxes. All the berries were radioactive. About half were over permissible levels, but the wholesalers bought them anyway. Turns out, they mix high-count berries with low-count ones to stay below the EU threshold. Berry bushes are brilliant at fixing radioactivity in their vascular networks. I found working through Soviet archives that before the Chernobyl plant was even built, the Pripyat marshes were already contaminated from nuclear testing in the 1960s. There you have it, Chernobyl in our breakfast bowls and Fukushima in our fish fries. The spread of radioactivity stands in for the many kinds of feral processes that add up to environmental catastrophe.
Through the method of storytelling from first-hand empirical observations, Feral Atlas wants you to see the world in a different perspective. Observe around you. Feral effects are everywhere. It's the aim of the Atlas to set out a new trajectory for studying the Anthropocene, with scientists and humanists working closely together to uncover the non-design effects of infrastructures. We hope that our radical transdisciplinary method can inspire more collaboration, not only between natural and social scientists, but also among artists, architects, and educators, thus offering multiple perspectives to study this intricate and sometimes terrible world of ours.